Have you ever hung up the phone after talking to your grown child and felt something heavy settle in your chest? A quiet voice whispering that something just wasn't right. Maybe you're sitting in your favorite chair right now, replaying a recent conversation, wondering if you're being too sensitive or if what happened truly crossed a line. You're not alone in this feeling, and you're not imagining things. Across America, millions of parents just like you are experiencing something that feels almost too painful to name out loud. Here's a truth that's hard to swallow. Sometimes, the children we raised, loved, and sacrificed for can become the very people who try to diminish us as we age. They use words that sound caring on the surface but carry an undertone that makes us feel small, guilty, or powerless. We tell ourselves it's just stress, that they don't mean it, that we should be grateful for any attention at all. But deep down, we know that respect shouldn't have an expiration date, and love shouldn't come with conditions that make us question our own worth. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you 5 specific phrases that, when your adult child uses them repeatedly, are clear signals that you need to step back and protect yourself. These aren't random complaints or misunderstandings. These are calculated words designed to control, manipulate, and make you doubt yourself. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to listen for, and more importantly, how to respond with the dignity and strength you've earned through decades of being a loving parent. Number 1. Introduction and general context. There comes a moment in every parent's life when you realize the child you raised has become someone you barely recognize. Maybe it happened gradually, so slowly you didn't notice at first. One day they're asking for your advice, the next they're questioning every decision you make. You find yourself walking on eggshells in conversations with the very person you once tucked into bed every night. If you're in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, you've probably felt this shift. The relationship with your grown children isn't what you imagined it would be during those sleepless nights when they were babies, or during those teenage years when you worried about their future. Back then, you dreamed of growing old with their love and respect intact. You pictured family gatherings filled with warmth, not tension. You imagined being valued for your wisdom, not dismissed as a burden. But here's what nobody prepared you for. Sometimes the people we love most, the ones we sacrificed everything for, begin to see us differently as we age. They start using words that sound caring on the surface, but carry an undertone that makes your heart sink. They speak to you in ways that feel wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on why. You tell yourself you're being too sensitive, that you should be grateful they're involved in your life at all. The truth is, words have power. The phrases your children use reveal how they truly see you. Are you their beloved parent who deserves respect and dignity? Or have you become, in their eyes, someone to manage, control, or extract value from? The difference matters more than you might realize, because how they speak to you today shapes how they'll treat you tomorrow. After decades of caring for others, of putting your children's needs before your own, of building the foundation that allowed them to thrive, you have every right to expect basic respect. This isn't asking too much. This isn't being demanding. This is recognizing your own worth after a lifetime of giving. And when that respect disappears, when conversations become battlegrounds for control, it's time to protect yourself. What I'm about to share with you are 5 specific phrases that serve as warning signs. When you hear these words repeatedly, especially when they come loaded with guilt, pressure, or contempt, they signal something deeper. They tell you it's time to step back, reflect, and possibly create some distance to preserve your dignity and peace of mind. Number 2. First phrase, you owe me. Picture this. You're sitting across from your adult child, and suddenly the conversation takes a turn that makes your stomach drop. They look at you with cold calculation and say those 3 words that turn your love into a transaction: you owe me. In that moment, 30, 40, 50 years of sleepless nights, sacrifices, and unconditional love get reduced to a debt that must be paid. This phrase strikes at the very core of what it means to be a parent. Every diaper you changed, every fever you nursed through the night, every dollar you stretched to buy school clothes becomes an entry in some invisible ledger your child has been keeping. The love you gave freely, without expecting anything in return, suddenly has a price tag attached to it. And now, they say, it's time for you to pay up. Let me tell you about George, a 78-year-old father who learned this lesson the hard way. After his wife passed, he decided to downsize from the large family home to a smaller apartment. He wanted to simplify his life, reduce the burden of maintenance, and create a more manageable living situation for his golden years. When he sold the house, his son immediately appeared with his hand out, claiming that part of that money was rightfully his. "You owe me, Dad," he said. "After everything I've done for you, this is my right." George sat there speechless. He remembered working 2 jobs to pay for his son's education. He remembered the years he supported his son's young family when they were struggling financially. He remembered being there for every crisis, every celebration, every moment his son needed him. And now, all of that was being twisted into an obligation, a debt that made him feel like a criminal for wanting to control his own money. This is how the poison starts. When your child begins to see you as a resource to be tapped rather than a person to be loved, every interaction becomes about what they can get from you. Your home becomes potential inheritance they're already counting. Your savings become money they feel entitled to. Your time, your energy, your very presence becomes something they own rather than something you choose to give. The manipulation is subtle but deadly. They don't demand money outright. Instead, they plant seeds of guilt. They remind you of times they helped you, as if keeping score. They make you feel selfish for wanting to spend your own money on yourself. They turn your desire for independence into evidence of your ingratitude. Here's what you need to understand. Raising your children was your choice and your joy, not a loan you issued with interest. The love you gave was a gift, not an investment expecting returns. When your adult child uses your past sacrifices as leverage to control your present decisions, they're not honoring your love. They're betraying it. If you hear this phrase once, it might be frustration talking. But if it becomes a pattern, if every conversation about money, property, or support comes back to what you supposedly owe them, then you're dealing with someone who has fundamentally changed how they see you. And when that happens, the only healthy response is to step back, set clear boundaries, and refuse to participate in transactions that diminish your worth as a human being. Number 3, second phrase, you can't live without me. There's a difference between offering help and wielding it like a weapon. When your adult child looks at you and says, "You can't live without me," they're not expressing love or concern. They're establishing dominance. They're telling you that in their eyes, you've become helpless, dependent, and incapable of managing your own life. And once they plant that seed in your mind, they'll use it to justify controlling every aspect of your existence. This phrase often comes disguised as care, wrapped in concern for your safety or well-being. But listen carefully to the tone. Watch the context in which it's said. Is it spoken with gentle worry about your health? Or is it delivered with the satisfaction of someone who enjoys having power over you? The difference reveals everything about what's really happening in your relationship. Let me share Margaret's story. At 74, she was a vibrant widow who had been managing perfectly well on her own for years after her husband's passing. When her daughter suggested she move in to help with some of the household tasks, Margaret thought it would be wonderful to spend more time together. What started as companionship, however, slowly transformed into something much darker. It began with small things. Her daughter started opening her mail, saying she was just trying to help organize her finances. Then she began accompanying her to doctor's appointments, not just for support, but speaking for her as if she couldn't articulate her own symptoms. Gradually, her daughter took over more and more decisions, from what groceries to buy to which friends she should see. When Margaret finally pushed back, feeling suffocated and diminished, her daughter delivered the crushing blow. "Mom, you wouldn't last a month living alone. You can't live without me." The words hit like a physical blow, because they were designed to make her feel small, incompetent, and grateful for treatment that was actually humiliation disguised as help. This is how control disguises itself as care. Your adult child doesn't snatch your independence away all at once. They chip away at it gradually, decision by decision, until you begin to doubt your own capabilities. They create dependency where none existed before, then point to that manufactured helplessness as proof that their control is necessary. Real help honors your dignity. It supports your choices rather than replacing them. It asks, "What do you need?" instead of assuming, "You can't handle this." When someone truly cares about you, they find ways to assist you while preserving your sense of autonomy and self-worth. They might help you organize your medications, but they don't take over your entire medical care. They might offer to drive you to appointments, but they don't speak for you once you're there. The sinister part of this phrase is how it makes you question reality. Maybe they're right, you think. Maybe you are becoming too dependent. Maybe you should be grateful that someone is willing to take care of you, even if their methods make you feel invisible. But needing help with some things doesn't mean you're helpless with everything. Accepting support doesn't mean surrendering control of your entire life. When you hear, "You can't live without me," repeatedly, especially during moments when you try to assert your independence or express discomfort with their level of involvement, you're being manipulated. Your child is using your natural vulnerabilities, the changes that come with aging, the loss of a spouse, health concerns, as tools to establish their dominance over your life. The healthy response is to recognize the difference between genuine assistance and emotional manipulation. If your child's help comes with a constant reminder of your supposed helplessness, if their support requires you to surrender your voice and your choices, then it's time to step back and reclaim what belongs to you, the right to make decisions about your own life, even if those decisions aren't perfect, even if you sometimes need help executing them. Number 4, third phrase, you're being dramatic. Imagine opening your heart to share something that's been weighing on you, only to have your adult child roll their eyes and dismiss your feelings with 4 devastating words. You're being dramatic. In that moment, your pain becomes performance, your concerns become complaints, and your legitimate emotions become evidence of your supposed instability. This phrase doesn't just dismiss what you're saying, it dismisses who you are. This is perhaps the cruelest form of emotional invalidation, because it makes you doubt your own perceptions. You start to wonder if you really are overreacting. Maybe your loneliness isn't that serious. Maybe your health concerns are exaggerated. Maybe your hurt feelings are just you being too sensitive. Before long, you stop sharing anything meaningful at all, because you've learned that opening up only leads to being diminished. Edward learned this painful lesson at 81, during his first holiday season after his beloved wife's death. The house that had once been filled with her laughter and warmth now echoed with silence. Simple things like setting the table for 1 instead of 2 brought tears to his eyes. The traditions they had built together over 5 decades felt hollow and meaningless without her presence. When his daughter came to visit, Edward tried to explain how difficult the holidays had become. He talked about how quiet the house felt, how much he missed his wife's voice during their morning coffee ritual, how even watching their favorite television shows together had become impossibly sad. He wasn't asking for anything except understanding, maybe a little extra company during this difficult time. Instead of compassion, he received judgment. "Dad, you're being dramatic," his daughter said with obvious irritation. "Mom's been gone for months now. You need to move on." Other people lose their spouses and don't carry on like this. Those words cut deeper than any physical pain he had ever experienced. In one dismissive sentence, she had minimized 53 years of marriage, labeled his grief as weakness, and made him feel ashamed for missing the love of his life. From that day forward, Edward stopped talking about his loneliness. He stopped mentioning the sleepless nights when he reached across the bed expecting to find his wife there. He stopped sharing how much he missed having someone to talk to about the small events of his day. He learned to say, "I'm fine," even when his heart was breaking, because expressing genuine emotion had become something to be ashamed of. This is what happens when your feelings are consistently labeled as drama. You begin to internalize the message that your emotional responses are wrong, excessive, or inappropriate. You start to believe that normal human reactions to loss, change, or disappointment are character flaws, rather than natural responses to life's challenges. Eventually, you stop feeling altogether, or at least stop expressing what you feel, which leads to profound emotional isolation. The truth is that at 60, 70, 80, or beyond, you've experienced more loss, change, and challenge than your children can possibly imagine. You've buried parents, friends, possibly spouses. You've watched your body change in ways that are frightening and frustrating. You've seen the world transform in ways that sometimes feel alienating. Your emotional responses to these experiences aren't dramatic, they're human. When your adult child dismisses your feelings as drama, they're refusing to engage with your reality. They don't want to deal with the complexity of your inner life because it requires them to see you as a complete person rather than a role they need you to play. It's easier to label you as over-emotional than to acknowledge that your feelings are valid and deserve attention. But your emotions are not performance pieces designed for their approval. Your grief is not too much. Your worry is not excessive. Your sadness is not weakness. After decades of life experience, you have every right to feel deeply about the things that matter to you. When someone tries to shame you for having normal human reactions to real-life situations, they're the ones with the problem, not you. Number 5. Fourth phrase. The world doesn't work like that anymore. Have you ever shared a piece of wisdom earned through decades of living, only to have your adult child wave it away with a condescending smile and those dismissive words? The world doesn't work like that anymore? In that moment, your lifetime of experience gets labeled as outdated, irrelevant, and worthless. Your hard-earned knowledge becomes nothing more than quaint stories from a bygone era that has no bearing on modern life. This phrase is particularly devastating because it doesn't just dismiss your opinion, it dismisses your entire value as a person who has navigated life successfully for many decades. It suggests that everything you learned about relationships, work, money, and character is now obsolete. It treats the wisdom that comes from experience as if it's expired milk that should be thrown away, rather than treasured knowledge that could benefit the next generation. Mary discovered this heartbreak when she tried to offer guidance about raising her grandchildren. At 76, she had successfully raised 4 children, all of whom had grown into responsible, caring adults. She had navigated the challenges of parenthood through economic hardships, family crises, and all the normal ups and downs that come with guiding young people into adulthood. When she watched her son struggling with his own children's behavior problems, she gently suggested some time-tested approaches. She talked about the importance of consistent boundaries, about teaching children to respect authority while still encouraging their individuality. She shared techniques that had worked when her own children went through similar phases. She spoke from a place of love, offering the kind of balanced discipline that builds character rather than breaking spirits. These weren't harsh or outdated methods. They were thoughtful approaches based on understanding human nature and child development. Instead of gratitude or even polite consideration, she received a lecture about modern parenting. "Mom, the world doesn't work like that anymore," her son said with obvious impatience. "Times have changed. Your way of doing things is outdated. We know more about child psychology now." The dismissal was swift and complete. Her decades of successful parenting were reduced to ignorant, old-fashioned methods that had no place in the contemporary world. What made this particularly painful was the implication that she had somehow damaged her own children with her outdated approaches. Never mind that those children had grown up to be successful, kind, responsible adults. Never mind that they had learned values like honesty, hard work, and respect for others. According to her son, her methods were not just wrong for today, they had always been wrong. This is how experience gets erased in modern family dynamics. Your adult children act as if wisdom has an expiration date, as if the fundamental truths about human nature that you learned through trial and error over many decades have somehow become invalid because the calendar has changed. They treat your knowledge as if it's ancient history rather than timeless insight into how people work and how relationships thrive. But here's what your children don't understand. Core human values don't have expiration dates. Honesty doesn't become outdated just because technology advances. Responsibility doesn't go out of style because society changes. Respect, kindness, hard work, and integrity are not generational preferences, they're the foundations of good character that remain constant regardless of what year it is or what new trends emerge. Yes, the world has changed in many ways. Technology has transformed how we communicate. Social norms have shifted. Economic realities are different than they were decades ago. But the basic principles of how to treat people well, how to build trust, how to create lasting relationships, how to develop inner strength, these things remain as relevant today as they were when you were learning them. When your adult child consistently dismisses your perspective as outdated, they're not protecting themselves from old-fashioned thinking. They're cutting themselves off from a valuable resource. They're choosing to learn everything through their own mistakes rather than benefiting from your successes and failures. More importantly, they're communicating that they see you as irrelevant to their lives, as someone whose thoughts and opinions no longer matter. The painful truth is that this phrase often comes up not because your advice is actually outdated, but because your child doesn't want to admit that your way of doing things might be better than theirs. It's easier to dismiss your wisdom as antiquated than to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, you know something valuable about how to live well. Number 6. Fifth phrase, why are you still living there? On the surface, this question sounds innocent, even caring. Your adult child seems concerned about your living situation, wondering if your current home still meets your needs. But listen more carefully. Notice the tone. Pay attention to how often this question comes up and what happens when you give your answer. Because sometimes, why are you still living there? Isn't about your well-being at all. It's about their convenience, their financial interests, or their need to control your choices. Your home isn't just a building with walls and a roof. It's the place where you built a life, where you raised your family, where every corner holds a memory that connects you to the person you've always been. It's where you and your spouse shared quiet Sunday mornings, where your children took their first steps, where holidays were celebrated and milestones marked. When someone questions why you're still there, they're questioning the value of your entire history. Robert understood this at 73, when his son began the campaign to get him to sell the house. It started subtly enough. During phone calls, his son would mention how big the house was for just one person. During visits, he would point out maintenance issues that needed attention, asking if it wasn't becoming too much to handle. He would suggest that downsizing might be smart and practical, as if Robert hadn't already considered these things himself. The questions became more frequent and more pointed. "Dad, why are you still living in that big house? Wouldn't a nice apartment be easier?" At first, Robert tried to explain his attachment to the place. He talked about the garden he and his wife had planted together, now mature and beautiful. He mentioned the neighbors who had become like family over the decades. He spoke about the comfort of familiar surroundings during a time when so much else in his life was changing. But his son's questions persisted, and gradually Robert began to realize they weren't really questions at all. They were pressure disguised as concern. His son had already calculated the value of the property. He had already imagined how that money might be invested or spent. He had already decided that his father's emotional attachment to the house was less important than the financial opportunity it represented. The truly devastating moment came when his son said, "Dad, you're being impractical. Why are you still living there when you could cash out and have money for your future care?" Suddenly, Robert's home had been reduced to a financial asset that he was foolishly hoarding instead of properly monetizing. His connection to the place became evidence of poor judgment rather than natural human attachment. This is how the question becomes a weapon. What sounds like concern for your practical needs is actually judgment about your choices. Your adult child has decided that your emotional connection to your home is irrational. Your desire to maintain independence is stubborn, and your right to make decisions about your own living situation is negotiable. They frame their pressure as looking out for your best interests, while ignoring what you've clearly communicated about what makes you feel safe and happy. The reality is that your home represents far more than shelter. It represents autonomy, continuity, and identity. It's proof that you're still the person who makes decisions about your own life. It's a physical connection to your history and your relationships. It's a place where you know where everything belongs and how everything works. For many people, especially after the loss of a spouse, home becomes an anchor in a world that suddenly feels unstable and unfamiliar. When your adult child repeatedly questions your living situation, especially when you've made it clear that you're comfortable and happy where you are, they're communicating that they don't trust your judgment about your own needs. They're suggesting that their assessment of what's best for you should override your own feelings and preferences. They're treating you like someone who can no longer make competent decisions about fundamental aspects of your own life. But choosing where to live is one of the most basic expressions of personal freedom. Whether your home is too big, too old, or too much work is your decision to make. Whether the financial implications of staying versus moving make sense for your situation is your choice to evaluate. Whether the emotional benefits of staying in familiar surroundings outweigh the practical challenges is your call to make. Number 7. Your response matters. Standing firm in your worth. Now that you've heard all 5 phrases, you might be sitting there with a heavy feeling in your chest, recognizing words that have been said to you, patterns that have developed in your relationships with your adult children. If that's the case, I want you to know something important. Recognizing these warning signs isn't about giving up on your children or writing them off. It's about protecting the dignity you've earned through a lifetime of love, sacrifice, and service to others. You've spent decades being the strong one, the reliable one, the person everyone else could count on. You were there for midnight fevers, teenage heartbreak, and adult crises. You celebrated their victories as if they were your own, and supported them through failures with unwavering love. You taught them how to walk, how to read, how to drive, and most importantly, how to become decent human beings. That foundation you provided doesn't disappear just because they sometimes forget to honor it. But here's what you need to understand about respect. It's not something you can beg for or negotiate into existence. When someone consistently uses words that diminish you, manipulate you, or attempt to control you, explaining why their behavior hurts isn't going to change them. Trying harder to please them won't earn their respect. Being more accommodating won't transform them into the loving, grateful children you hoped they would become. The power you have is in how you respond. When your adult child says, "You owe me," you can calmly reply, "I gave you life and love freely. That wasn't alone." When they claim, "You can't live without me," you can respond, "I appreciate your help, but I'm more capable than you think." When they dismiss your feelings as dramatic, you can say, "My emotions are valid, and I don't need your permission to feel them." When they tell you the world doesn't work the way you think it does, you can remind them, "Some truths don't change with the calendar." And when they question why you're still living in your own home, you can simply state, "Because it's my choice to make." But sometimes, words aren't enough. Sometimes, the only response that preserves your dignity is distance. Not permanent estrangement, not dramatic confrontations, but clear, calm boundaries that protect your peace of mind. This might mean ending phone calls when conversations become disrespectful. It might mean declining invitations to events where you're likely to be treated poorly. It might mean reducing the frequency of your interactions until the dynamic improves. This isn't punishment, it's self-preservation. You're not being vindictive, you're being wise. After decades of putting others first, you have every right to put your own emotional well-being first when necessary. You have the right to expect basic respect from the people you love. You have the right to be treated as a valuable person whose opinions matter, whose feelings are legitimate, and whose choices deserve consideration. If you've recognized your own experiences in what we've discussed today, type the number 1 in the comments below. If these phrases have become part of regular conversations with your adult children, type the number 2. If you're ready to start setting boundaries to protect your dignity, type the number 3. And if this message has given you the courage to value yourself the way you deserve to be valued, type the number 4. Remember, expecting respect isn't asking too much. Wanting to be treated with dignity isn't being demanding. After a lifetime of love and sacrifice, you deserve relationships that honor who you are and what you've contributed. Don't settle for less than that. And don't let anyone convince you that you should. You've carried the weight of love for decades. You've been the foundation that others built their lives upon. You've given freely, without keeping score, because that's what parents do. But somewhere along the way, some of your children forgot that love should flow both ways, that respect shouldn't have an expiration date. Today, you've learned to recognize the warning signs hidden in everyday conversations. Those phrases that made your heart sink now have names. That uncomfortable feeling in your stomach when certain words are spoken? You now understand it's your inner wisdom telling you that something isn't right. You're not being too sensitive. You're not imagining things. You're recognizing patterns that need to change. The most powerful thing you can do is trust yourself again. Trust that your feelings are valid. Trust that your boundaries matter. Trust that expecting basic respect after a lifetime of giving isn't asking too much. When you step back from relationships that consistently diminish you, you're not giving up on love. You're protecting the very dignity that makes you capable of loving well. Remember George, Margaret, Edward, Mary, and Robert. Each one found strength in recognizing their worth. Each one discovered that distance, when used wisely, can heal what closeness couldn't fix. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in your own diminishment. Your experience matters. Your voice deserves to be heard. Your choices deserve respect. After decades of putting others first, it's not selfish to put your peace of mind first. It's necessary. Which of these lessons did you most need to hear today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this message spoke to your heart, please give it a like so others can find the courage to value themselves too. And consider sharing it with someone who might need this reminder that their dignity is worth protecting. You've spent a lifetime learning how to love others. Now it's time to remember how to honor yourself. Until next time, remember that your worth isn't negotiable, and neither should your peace be.